sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. With my soul. It is
did you have one of the best pieces of advice, especially maybe that your parents gave you? Do you have any that stand out? Maybe a mom or dad, or advice maybe that you've kind of always remembered, or kind of maybe advice, lesson learned a little bit, kind of life teaching. Anything that stand out to you? You think about lessons learned, advice maybe that your parents tried to give you. Maybe you had to learn the hard way because you didn't listen. But yeah. That's a that was a prophecy. I gave you a fire. Yeah. Remember anything that stands out? Advice or uh, change the oil? Yeah. Yeah. Don't point at someone. You got three pointing back at you. Yeah.
Dad always said, don't start a job on Sunday. Nothing good comes from it.
Yeah. Don't start a job on Sunday. Yeah. 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 Roy.
After I graduated from high school, I spent that first summer sleeping a lot. Dad advised me it'd be a good thing for me to go get a job somewhere.
Yeah.
He's that way.
Yeah. And you did, and turned out pretty good. Any others think about good advice that maybe your folks passed on to you, particularly, or yeah, Lucy. Don't forget where you came from. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Dolores. Just do your best. Yeah, just always do your best. That's all you can ask. And yeah, Irene or Valora. I'm sorry. Can't never tried. Like that. Can't never tried. Can't never tried. Yeah.
Be careful of the toes you step on today. It might be connected to something you need to kiss tomorrow.
Okay. Wow. There's a lot there to. Well, in chapters 4 and 5, what we're going to do is, and we will, because we're not going to spend much time in chapter 4, but we're just going to kind of glance chapter 4 a little bit more in 5, and then starting next week, we're going to kind of, I got a cord here. I felt like something was getting me. Yeah, right. It was this cord. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. There we go. Yeah, I thought maybe I knocked something off, so I'll stop that. I didn't want to get my foot tangled in this cord and do a. You wouldn't laugh, huh? All right. So it would. Yeah, it's on video here. So, wow, what was I saying? Yes, not spending time in chapter 4. That wasn't it, though. Oh, next week. Thank you, Dolores. I need all the help I can get. Next week, we're going to start looking at friendship. So we'll be looking at themes of friendship and kind of. So 4 and 5 here, these kind of this intro chapters to the book. And chapter 4 and 5 is Solomon, or is the writer, giving advice, wisdom, of course, to his son. And of course, the principle, the application is for all of us, as the Holy Spirit has had this preserved for us. And so that's what he's going to be talking about. And he really, it's going to be, two things mainly. And he's going to get some couple specifics here that we'll look at. But listening and choosing. Listening and then acting upon that. Making good choices. And of course, that's what, a good part of Proverbs is all about, is the wisdom that's reflected. Remember, wisdom is the skills to be able to negotiate the complexities of life. We can be successful in living. We can. And I'm going to tell you, we need to be teaching that to people, because our world, our society, especially younger generation, They need to know that they can navigate through life. They can do this. Is it highly complex? Is it a lot of ethical, moral, and all kinds of difficult? Yes. And for those of you maybe over the years that have watched things kind of become more crazy and hectic and with technology, and we understand the complexities of life maybe in ways that it wasn't, even when I was a teenager or 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. But we can navigate through life through the wisdom that God gives us. And so that's what he's telling him here, and that starts with listening. Now, ultimately listening to God, but he's also going to be saying, listen to me. I mean, look how he starts here in chapter 4. Listen, my sons, to a father's instruction. Pay attention. Gain understanding. I give you sound learning, so do not forsake my teaching. For I too, notice, was a son to my father, still tender and cherished by my mother. Then he taught me and said to me, take hold of my words with all your heart. Keep my commands and you will live. Get wisdom, get understanding. Don't forget my words or turn away from them. And so, and I like how he says here, and all parents, we've said this to our kids before, I've been in your shoes, right? Now, sometimes, especially when they're teenagers, they can kind of not think we were ever young, right? And we didn't ever go to high school. We never got a job or asked a person on a date we apparently did nothing in life, right, up until, but we are telling them often what? I have been where you've been. Yes, it might have been a lot different. It may not have been as complicated as it is today, but I've been where you've been. And what are we telling them when we're saying that, among other things? Some things we're trying to get them to realize? That we understand, first of all, we get some understanding there of compassion, of, what else are we saying? That we care. You can handle it. Yeah, I made it, right? Again, yes, it's crazy what kids are facing nowadays, but it's the same things that you have to navigate. Choices, peer pressure, all those things. And we're also saying learn from my mistakes. Maybe in a way we can say, I made some mistakes. Don't do that, what I did. And so it's very important that, as parents and grandparents, we press upon them that idea. I can help you get through the struggle. And that's what I love about the Scripture, is that's what God has wrote us a manual, a how-to navigate through life, through the wisdom of God, ultimately manifested in Jesus Christ. And so we can do this. And to be successful, we have to learn to navigate and with the wisdom of God. And so, again, we're not focusing on every verse here. I just want you to get the feel of it as he's saying, don't forsake these teachings. Verses 6 through 9, do not forsake wisdom and she will protect you. So here again, wisdom personified here as a woman. Love her and she will watch over you. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Though it cost all you have, get it. And so we've talked about that before. Wisdom is the most cherished, prized possession. Even said, remember last week, more than riches, more than jewels or rubies. Now, we said we don't always live as though that's the truth, right? Because what do we so often pursue? The riches, the success. We make that a top priority when our priority should always be the wisdom of God. And again, manifested in Jesus Christ, who displays the wisdom and the truth and the revelation of God. And so here he says that though it costs you all you have. Think about that. Boy, how would that reset everything if we really had that perspective like we need to? That this is the most important thing in life. Again, what's going to get people through life? The wisdom of God. What's going to be the downfall of people? The folly of man. It's that simple. And again, ultimately manifested in Jesus Christ, who is the revelation of God's wisdom. And so he says, this is how you're going to get, notice what he says, cherish her, and she'll exalt you. Embrace her, and she will honor you. She will give you a garland to grace your head and present you with a glorious crown. I mean, you're going to have peace, you're going to have satisfaction, you're going to have honor. These things are played out in people who live a life of wisdom. Again, what have we said? The Proverbs are general truths, so it doesn't mean never problems, never hardships, we're never going to have something bad to happen to us. That's not what that means. But it does mean that when we live the life God calls us to live, we can have a greater sense of fulfillment and peace and even relationships with others that are not always in conflict. And that's a general truth here that he says. Again, verse 10, listen. What did we say the focus was? Listen and then act or make good decisions. Accept what I say. And the years of your life, look at that, will be many. I instruct you in the way of wisdom and lead you along the straight paths. When you walk, your steps will not be hampered. When you run, you will not be stumbled. So notice, what does he use as a metaphor, an image of wisdom here? What does he say there? It's like, what are we doing? We're taking steps. What's he say? Another thing. We're walking on a path. Why does he use that image? Steps, paths. What? Something they all do. Okay. It's a journey. Life, the metaphor of life is that it is a what? It's a journey we're on. We are traveling. You can't stay put, right? Really, you just can't. I mean, and so you have to get up, you have to interact, you have to live in this world. You can't just sit back and hide, right? You can't. You've got to move. You've got to make it through life as a journey. And so what do we have as we're on this journey? What options do we have? Do we have other paths? We've got lots of options. Yeah, we got rabbit trails. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's right. But we're presented with all sorts of, choices of views that say, this or that and this and that and the other. And so there is a lot of, I mean, have you ever been out there on a hike or something? You see a couple of trails and paths and, okay, which one do we go down? Which one do we, I want to go on the one that's proven, the one that will get you there. I mean, they say, it's amazing how many people die in the Grand Canyon every year, first of all. I mean, it's crazy how many, and the number one thing is they tell them, do not get off the path. And yet, what does people do? They get off the path, sometimes by accident. Because how can you accidentally get off the path, right? I mean, that's possible. You're not what? Not paying attention. You're not being aware of where things are at. And I mean, you got to stay with the markers and whatever. I mean, you can't just be, in la-la land. And then, of course, you can willfully what? Well, some people get off the path of the Grand Canyon because they think what? I know what I'm doing. This will be more fun. Yeah. Somebody else hadn't been here. I can blaze a trail. I can be the first to, whatever. And that is deadly dangerous. You get out there and you get lost. And your supply gets low. And you get injured or whatever it may be. And so he says, you got to choose this path. And so he says, when you walk, your steps won't be hampered. When you run, you won't stumble. Hold on to instruction. Don't let it go. Guard it well, for it is your life. This is very key in the Hebrew mindset. The wisdom that God gave, the instructions that he told Israel. Remember what he told them in Deuteronomy? You will live if you what? Keep or do these what? These commands, my word. And he'll use language throughout the Old Testament. Matter of fact, I want you to consume them, right? What's he compare it to? He's going to hear in just a minute. He's going to talk about honey. But he wants you to taste it and to feed upon it. Well, what do we eat for? What's the primary reason we eat? I know we enjoy it and all that, it tastes good, but to live, right? The wisdom of God is what? Life. What's going on out here in our world? People are dying, literally, but also spiritually, figuratively in ways, in their relationships, their jobs, their whatever, because they're not living what? God's wisdom. And we've got it. We can offer this to the world. And so it's exciting to think about that. It's a lifetime. We don't get it all at once, and we grow as we. But he says, verse 14, do not set foot on the path of the wicked. So here's going to be another theme here. Don't follow the paths of evil people or walk in the way of evildoers. Avoid it. Don't travel on it. Turn from it. Go on your way, for they cannot rest until they do evil. They are robbed of sleep till they make someone stumble. They eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. And he says, the path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining even brighter till the full light of day. But the way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. And so here he says, don't follow the paths of evil people. Now, I think most people know that, but why is that such a challenge for us? Why does the Scripture has to warn us about this? Like, you would think that's a duh, I don't need to worry about that. Of course, don't follow the path of evil people. That path is more exciting? Yeah? What else? Kind of in that same venue, what idea? What do we think we benefit? We achieve more, right? Get more out of life, greed. Maybe easier. Yeah, all you suckers that are working and being honest and, I'm saying that people will flat out tell you that sometimes. That's why they cut corners. That's why they, is they don't want to work. They don't want to labor. And I've often thought about criminals. If they would take all that effort and time and energy to learning something honestly instead of the ways that they cheat and steal and rob. And some of them are extremely, yeah. Boy, if we could, and you've seen that in, I think about the FBI, that famous, I forget the guy, they made a movie, Catch Me If You Can, where the guy was what did he do? Rob banks, and I forget what he did. Checks forgery, yeah. And he eventually worked for the FBI because they're like, you got to help us. And yeah, pilot. You're thinking, and so we see that, and especially when you're young, that's real tempting, right? Because, we see what others have and we want it now, and do we want to work hard? Do we want to have to stay on the straight path? And do we want to take those shortcuts? Everybody likes a shortcut. I get it. I'm driving around in Tulsa, they got construction over there off of downtown and Utica Square. You got to know where to get off and where to take the shortcut now, because I don't want to sit on the BA Expressway for 20 minutes, right? I got to get where I need to go. I need some shortcuts. And so we all understand that, but living life with the things of God, he says, it is bad. And I love this description about their way of wickedness, verse 19, is like deep darkness. You ever been somewhere in real darkness? You ever been in a cave, explored caves? Your eyes don't adjust. You literally, your hand, right? You punch yourself and wouldn't know it, right? It is that dark. Here's what I think he's saying there. They lose sense of reality. A couple of years back, I was really struggling with this because I thought, how can people be so crazy? How can they be so, have you ever thought that in recent years? Like, how are people doing this and thinking this and act? They have lost sense of reality. I believe that. And here's my scripture to prove it. They are in the darkness so deep, they don't know what. They don't know, up or down, heads or tails. We're sitting there pulling out our hair going, why are you doing that? Why are you? And they're looking at us like, what are you doing what? You can go in the darkness of sin, and it changes how we see everything, and we don't even know it. We lose that. It doesn't mean we're not accountable. That's not what he's saying. But they don't even know what makes them stumble. And you keep seeing choice after choice and bad choice after choice, and you keep going, why do they keep doing that? They don't. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's absolutely there, Kathy. That's come back to that just a second here. Absolutely, they make excuses, and so he says here. Let's get this finished up here. Verse 20. My son, pay attention to what I say. Turn your ear to my words. Don't let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart. Did you ever say that to your kids when they were little? Don't get out of my sight. We went to some places sometimes, large crowds. I remember we had 3, Maggie and I. And so, I mean, when you have, with one kid, okay, I'm just going to say, you are a parent. But you're kind of a parent asterisk at times, okay? One kid, okay, yes, you're a parent. 2 kids, now you got to do man on man. You go 3 and more in your zone defense. Now they are outnumbered. And some of you have got 4, 5, 4, 5, I don't know. And so we would take our 3, and it's like, don't get out of our sight, right? What are we communicating? We don't want you to get lost. There's danger. Just the value of them. I mean, they are the number one most important thing. And look what he says here. Don't let it get out of your sight. Pay attention to this. Keep them in your heart. Verse 22. What have we said once again? They are your what? Life. To those who find them. And notice what he says. Health to one's body. Study after study is showing that the American way, work and other way lifestyle is killing us. It's killing us in so many ways. And other countries around the world are looking at us at times going, yeah, you guys just keep doing that to yourself. We'll kind of have a little less stress and a little less crazy life. And so wisdom will even, generally speaking, will guard your health. It'll bring wholeness to your body and mind. And again, not absolutes. We understand that. Young people die, and some people live a long life that didn't take care of themselves. I understand that. Verse 23, above all else, guard your heart. For everything you do, what? Flows from it. That's an important verse. The heart, the inner. This is the inner being of who we are. It's our will, it's our intellect, it's our emotion, it's our passion, it's our desires, the inward man. Jesus said, out of the heart proceeds all these what? Murder and adultery and idolatry and theft and hatred and murder. Out of the heart. Guard your heart. I ran across this statement. We choose what we believe is most satisfying. And I thought that was a good statement. We choose what we believe is most satisfying. And what wisdom is telling us here is choose God. He is the most satisfying. Let Him be the number one thing in your heart. Is above all else, guard your heart, because this is the key. And that's why, again, we have to be careful that we don't in the church, and we've done this at times, where we just kind of this externally outward religion, keep the commandments, so to speak, don't murder, don't, come to church and gonna do these things outwardly, but our heart, it has to come from our heart, or we're just going through motions, and eventually it will be reflected if our heart is not pure. You can only fool God so long, even kind of play acting or are just going through the motions. So he says, above else, do this. Everything flows from it. Keep your mouth free from perversity. Keep corrupt talk from your lips. We'll come back to our speech in a few weeks. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Be careful. Give careful thought to the paths of your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Stay on the path of wisdom is what he's stressing. So, chapter 4. Okay, let's get chapter 5 here real quick. Let's see if we can get through some of this. All right, look at chapter 5. I can't go through all the verses per se, but let me just say this. Here he's going to talk about the pitfall of sexual immorality. So I want to say a few things here. We kind of talked about this a few weeks ago, I believe, when we introduced the adulterous woman that he will kind of talk about with his sons. You understand the principle, the application would be, man, woman, male, female. It doesn't, but this is the context in which he says. And so again, pay attention, chapter 5, verse 1. Don't turn your ear from my words of insight, that you may gain discretion, that your lips may preserve knowledge. So beginning in verse 3, he's going to talk about the adulterous woman. The lips of the adulterous woman drip honey. Her speech is smoother than oil. Anybody like honey? I mean, you can put honey on what? This is some good stuff you can put honey on. It is sweet on styrofoam, yeah. It's sweet. It just, boy. And here Solomon is warned about, be careful being drawn by the words that she uses. Now, men, this is specifically something that inflated egos. We can struggle with that in ways. I know women can too, but not. Women struggle, have some other areas that are particularly unique for them. But quite frankly, this makes men often vulnerable because one of our basic emotional needs as men is to be admired. We like what do we like, ladies? You know us. Attaboy. We want to hear an attaboy. We want to hear a good job. Look at that lawn. Look at that project. Look what you did. We've got a sense of an emotional need of self-identity. We really, and as a result, what are we susceptible to in ways? Again, women can be too. What do we call it? Flattery, inflated ego. Oh, you're the best ever. You are the most handsome. You following me now? And what can we do as men? Oh, yeah, I like to hear that. And it may not even start out, it don't have to go straight sexual, right? But we are opening ourselves up if we're not careful. And that's what he says here. Oh, she is stroking your ego. Watch out for her words. And she says, he says, but in the end, verse 4, she's as bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. She gives no thought to the way of life. Her paths wander aimlessly, but she does not know it. Now, my sons, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house, lest you lose your honor to others and your dignity to one who is cruel. Lest strangers feast on your wealth and your toil enrich the house of another. At the end of your life, you will groan when your flesh and body are spent. You will say, how I hated discipline, how my heart spurned correction. I would not obey my teachers or turn my ear to my instructors. And I was soon in serious trouble in the assembly of God's people. We'll stop there. But this whole idea here is be careful with this smooth, flattering speech that takes you down a path of a sexual venture, because it will be your ruin. It will be your destruction. And here's how we would summarize it, I think. Did your parents ever tell you, if you play with fire, you're going to get burnt? Did anybody ever have to learn that the hard way? Maybe literally with fire. I think boys especially, right? I remember, boy, one of the worst whippings my middle brother got was fire, wasn't it, Mom? Down at a guy's house, neighbor's house, remember, something had been warned, and all I know is the guy was that, did he bring him down there or come to the door? And they were matches, and ooh, that was one of those. Now, we always kind of enjoyed it when our brothers would get it, but that was one of those you were like, oh my, like you didn't even want to smile or be, and you're almost kind of like, oh man, I do kind of feel a little bad for my brother because he's about to get it. And because what? You burn someone's house down. Now what the liability, what all that would cause, right? Potentially loss of life. And so you are playing with fire is what he says here. And you're going to get burnt. And what's it going to do to you? What's he described there? Financially? Your reputation? He talks about being brought into the assembly of God's people. They knew how to practice church discipline back then, in the community. That's why they had shepherds or elders. That model was there in the Old Testament. And so you're going to lose reputation. You're going to lose your own physical. Your end of your life, your flesh and body are going to be spent because you hated discipline. You spurned correction. Verse 15, drink from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Should your springs overflow in the streets, your streams of water in the public squares, let them be yours alone, never be shared with strangers. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breast satisfy you always. May you be intoxicated with her love. So one of the protections against sexual immorality is marriage. We've got to talk more and more about the beauty of marriage and the joy that God gives and the sexual fulfillment, natural desires that we have as creatures of God, creations of God, and how God wants that to be enjoyed and to be satisfied in the blessings of marriage. Sex is not dirty. Sex is not to be ashamed of it. We just don't talk about it. We don't show any sort of affection. There was generations in the past that you didn't talk about it. You didn't show it. You didn't, and I understand that, but we've got to make sure our kids and others see that the beauty and the joy that God gives in married love. And this is a major help from temptation. 1 Corinthians 7, we don't have time to turn over there, but he says very clearly, don't neglect each other, right? Sexually as husband and wife. Don't do that. You are there so that you don't have that temptation. And it's not a foolproof, it's not a guarantee, but it is a great protection that God gives us in the confines of married love, and we need to model that, and we need to grow in that, and I would encourage you to do that. And I don't care how long you've been married, 2 years, 5 years, 40, I don't care. This is an area that, as husbands and wives, the most intimate, the most shared thing we do is what God gives. The two become one flesh, and that's talking about sexually. That is what that is. And this language may make us a little, red-faced, but you be intoxicated with her. And again, the flip side would be for the wife as well with her husband. Why be intoxicated with another man's wife? Why embrace the bosom of a wayward woman? For your ways are in full view. Look what he concludes here by saying. He says two things as he closes. Your ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all your paths. So that's another way of saying God sees what? Everything. You remember what it says about David after his sin with Bathsheba? It says after, that, of course, he had Uriah killed and covered it up, and now he takes Bathsheba and marries her and has her be his wife, and she's going to have this child. You know, that they've, it says, but the thing David did was displeasing to the Lord. Everybody else was fooled, right? But God, what? God saw it. And then he sent the prophet Nathan, apparently. I gave him several months because the child's going to be born right after that and die. And but so David had some time to think about it, but he thought he got away with it. And God saw it. And so here he says, you remember that the Lord sees everything, and he examines all your paths. It's kind of like, you know, you getting about teachers that want to check the work. Show me your work. Show me how you got there. God's going to examine. God's going to see. He sees our paths, and we can't cheat or hide it from Him. And then he says, secondly, this sexual sin will trap, and it'll be the trigger to your destruction. He says, the evil deeds of the wicked ensnare them. The cords of their sins hold them fast. And so that image of a trap, to be ensnared. And again, we talked about that a couple weeks ago when it talks about, I forget the language there in chapter 2, about the animal that's caught. Does it not see the trap? Does it? And I said, I kind of think even if it sees it, the food is just, the temptation's too much. Too much temptation. And that temptation is so strong. We have to guard our steps, our hearts. We can't put ourselves. Why do we try to get so close to the edge? And that's a bad problem people have. How close can I get to sin? The number one question preachers will, I kid you not, if we had a list, it'd be near the top. How much is too much that I can drink and not get drunk? I mean, we will get those questions constantly, you know, and it's always in the area of, how much can I do and not sin? How close can I get to, and again, I'm not saying, you know, I understand there's this, but I'm just saying, when it comes to these matters, particularly this area, he says, you get away from it because it'll trap you. It'll ensnare you. Have you ever seen that with someone? Have you had some family and friends sexually? It was their downfall. I'm talking about their life, their marriage, their job. You can do this. Because I know in this audience, you've got some. You ever seen members that used to sit in these pews? That sexual temptations was what? It trapped them and it ruined them. Job, family, good name, what? You name it. Health. Because later on, we said from the last chapter, they're going to get to a point where they're going to cry out, why did I do this, right? Why did I do that? Why did I hurt myself? Why did I hurt my family? Why did I lose my job? And and then he says, secondly, it is going to be their destruction. The lack of discipline, they will die. Led astray by their own great folly. What have we said time and time again? Wisdom is your life. If we don't have wisdom, we will be destroyed. And again, I just submit to you Exhibit A, America 2023. What are we doing to ourselves? We're destroying ourselves. And we have the wisdom of Christ and of God to offer them hope and the light of the world. And that's what the book of Proverbs also is, a great book to give instruction. Any comments, questions, final word, yays, nays that you think about? I know we kind of flew through that. I wanted to kind of get through it so we can start talking about these topics. All right. Well, again, we'll start looking at some friendship verses and good things and things that we get instructed in that area starting next week. We'll be starting looking at some various topics over the next 7-8 weeks or however long we're going to have the class the next two months or so. All righty. Glad you're here. Well, Lord willing, see you Sunday.